Hello everybody! This is going to be a video about turkey calls.
Thank you, Brian. Happy to be here and happy to be talking about turkey calls some more. Today we're going to talk about Lynch, world champion turkey calls. This here is a Lynch Model 102 made in Birmingham, Alabama. One of the more collectible Lynch turkey calls. Lynch turkey calls, ML Lynch started making his turkey calls in Birmingham, Alabama, and later on when he sold the company to Alan Jenkins, they moved to Liberty, Mississippi, and nowadays they're in Thomasville, Georgia. This is, like I say, this here is a Birmingham, Alabama model, and here is pretty much the same call, but what this is a newer Liberty, Mississippi model. This is the older one. This is Liberty, from Birmingham, Alabama. This is Liberty, Mississippi. Here, again, is a Model 102. This is a much newer model, also Liberty, Mississippi. You can see there's quite a few differences in the Lynch calls. And then going even further, here is the same model again, Model 102. But this is made in Thomasville, Georgia. This is a modern call. These are a little bit more highly collectible. So there you have it. There's 4 versions of the Lynch Model 102. Also, as far as the 102, here's another. This is called the Deluxe Lynch 102D. I think that it's a little bit different. Instead of the mahogany lid like most of the Lynches have, this has a mahogany body and a walnut lid. It's got a nice high-pitched sound. This is a more modern version of the Model 102. This is the 102D. Also, one more of the modern calls is what they call the Model 150 Lynch Longbeard call. It's a deeper sounding call. It's designed to sound like long-bearded turkey. Next, as far as the Lynch goes, are the one-sided calls. Lynch's Foolproof Model 101. Again, the Birmingham calls are highly collectible. The Liberty calls are collectible, also very collectible, and the more modern calls are made in Thomasville, Georgia. This one, great sounding call. This Model 101 Foolproof was made in Liberty, Mississippi. Now, another really neat thing about old ML Lynch back in the day was he was a waste not, want not type of guy. And he used every scrap of wood that he possibly could. And if he came up a little bit short and it didn't fit his pattern quite, but he could make it work, he made it work. And here's an example. As you can see, his wood wasn't long enough for a handle, so he still made the call kind of short. This is a pretty unique old ML Lynch. Again, Liberty, Mississippi on this one, I believe. Yes, Liberty, Mississippi, another Liberty, Mississippi call. But you can see, it was a piece of scrap wood, and he still made the call out of it. One last call. It's not a Lynch, it's a Lynch Wannabe. This is a Lynch Takeoff. It's an Ideals turkey call. Oh, and come with lots of instructions in a really, really cool box. Made in Japan. Probably the only turkey call ever made in Japan. And it's a Lynch knockoff. I should say a Lynch Wannabe. But even so, it's kind of a cool call, and it's a pretty collectible call. One last thing about Lynch's is their guidebooks and their published information is also pretty cool and pretty collectible. I have two older examples here. If you ever come across these, it'd probably be a wise thing to read them and learn what you can, but to put them away and save them. Random box calls, random collectible calls here that I want to show you. Let's see where's. Okay, we'll start with this one. This is the Old Reliable Box Call by Paul Butsky. I believe he was out of Niagara Falls. This particular call here was the call that I called in my first ever wild turkey gobbler with. A lot of memories with this one. And I have this one, and this is a poplar box. And then I also have this Old Reliable that is a walnut box, and it is also signed by Paul Butsky, which is really cool. The Old Reliable. Next, I have very highly collectible, a little bit of dust on this one, very highly collectible call, and also an excellent hunting call. We're in the Western New York area, which is home to Quaker Boy game calls. Quaker Boy is the big call company in our area, and they make a lot of fine calls. This is a Grand Old Master. Here is another. This is the Supreme Grade Grand Old Master. It's a numbered call. Sounds quite a bit like the same as the last one. And this one is a limited edition of what they call the cloverleaf style. It's an adjustable call with all these different holes. You can adjust the lid on the box and get a multitude of different sounds. You could sound like a whole flock of turkeys with this call. Another local call maker, we just did two local call makers, Paul Butsky, the Old Reliable, and Dick Kirby of Quaker Boy with the Grand Masters. Now another one, I have a good story to tell with this one. This is a local custom call maker, and we have in August every year in the Western New York area, we have a Trappers Show, the Little Valley Trappers Show, and it's like an outdoor flea market. It's a great place. I've sold my turkey calls back there in the past in the 90s. And I remember one year I went there, I always go there looking around for old calls or old outdoor gear. And I heard, yup, yup, yup. This is what I heard. And I'm like, oh, turkey calls. I'm getting closer and I'm getting closer. And I walk up to the table, and there's two 15-year-old kids sitting there playing with box calls. And my first thought was, two 15-year-old kids playing with box calls. But then I look, there was a whole table full of custom calls. And I asked the kid, I go, who makes these calls? And he says, I do. Turns out I had just met David Halloran. And he had just started out. He was only 15, and I think it was his first time selling calls. And he made some really nice turkey calls for a 15-year-old. This is not one of his real old ones, but this is a checkered call that he makes, a Neil Cost style call. David turned out to be, he grew up to be a very sought after custom call maker. Here's a checkered Neil Cost style. And here's another, this is a wormy chestnut that is with a turkey wood burned on the lid. Two David Halloran style calls. That one's a screamer. More highly collectible calls are the camp callers. This was made by Doug Camp, who's passed away many years ago. Very nice southern gentleman. He makes some really great calls. As you can tell, that's a quality yelp. I have several of his calls. Some of them say camp callers on the bottom. Some of them say camp callers on the top. And these are very highly collectible calls. I don't think you can touch them for under $150 nowadays. These are kind of cool. I bought these many, many years ago, these two calls here. These, let me play it for you real quick. Messed up. Oh, I see. A little bit difficult to play because I didn't realize that he doesn't have a string in there. He's got a piece of rubber in there instead of a spring. But anyways, these two really cool calls here were made by a New York guy, Mark Stevenson. And the paintings on them were done by a famous artist, Jack Docking. He had these painted really nice. This call here is a really cool box call. It's an older call. It's the Stevenson's Turkey Talker out of Pennsylvania. You can see it's got a very slim profile. Maybe needs a tiny bit of chalk, but this is a very highly collectible call. Two more pretty interesting calls are made by unknown makers. I have no idea. This was probably made, you can see it's all nailed together. This was probably made by some farmer that had some wood left over. Maybe it's an experiment that went nowhere, but who knows. And then here's another really interesting one. No spring, no screw. There's a nail up there, and you kind of just balance it on the nail. Not really much of a sound to it, but it's, again, a kind of a unique, unknown, handmade turkey call. Now, as far as collecting turkey calls go, there is a Bible, and only one guy wrote it, but actually there are three versions. Earl Mickles' Call Makers Past, Present, the three different books. They're all out of print. They're all highly collectible. The first one, I've seen it go, depending on how many signatures you have in it, they start out around $1,000. This is the second book, and this is the third one. The third book is pretty readily available. You can still get it, and it profiles turkey call makers all across the U.S. And one more thing for anybody that is interested in starting to learn how to, this is how I learned, one of the ways I learned how to make turkey calls is a tape by Neil Gobbler Cost. Neil Cost was the father of all custom call makers. He's passed away many years now, but he was so generous that he passed on his knowledge in the form of a videotape. And I think it's still available today on DVD by collecting it by contacting the Georgia chapter of the National Wild Turkey Federation.
I'd like to thank Kevin for stopping by and giving us a little look at some collectible turkey calls today. Thanks, Kevin. I turned off the lights here and take care, everybody. Till next time, keep on trucking.